Last week we took a look at like the first half of the passage in Luke chapter 15. Again, this is sometimes called the parable of the prodigal son or the lost son. I think it should be called the parable of the two lost sons, or I think last week I called it the two bad sons, or really the parable of the loving father. Tonight I want us to focus a bit on the other brother, because we're pretty familiar with the one who ran away and he came back. And so we'll pick up from where we left off last week in Luke chapter 15. Is this just not working tonight, Karen? Do I need a new battery? That's on. So if you're reading tonight in Luke chapter 15, starting at verse 21, page 1364. Seems to be okay.
Oh, you were in it. Yeah,
Okay.
you got it.
And we'll backtrack just a bit in a few minutes, but this is picking up where the son had his moment of clarity. They call it in recovery. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Remember, one of the things I said last week is that if you're going to love and be loved, you need to learn to touch and be touched. And here we see the father's love for his children, embracing them. I know several years ago, almost 20 years ago, Marky, who is going to be 21 next month, big guy, he wasn't so big when he was a year old. And his mom and dad and I, for some reason, we met at Brandon Mall. And Marky was in the stroller and he wasn't feeling well. And he got to me and I held him. And for some reason in that moment, he just wanted to be held. And he just laid with his head on my shoulders for maybe 5 minutes while I held him. And those were some of the most wonderful 5 minutes of my life. Just to hold my grandson like that. His father saw him, was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to the father, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to the servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the sons and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours," notice, not brother of mine, "when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And you remember, this is the third of 3 parables that Jesus told. The first was about a lost sheep. And the shepherd left the 99 that were safe, and he went out looking for the one that was lost. And when he came back, he and his friends celebrated. And Jesus said, in the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. And then in the second parable, remember, the woman lost a coin. And so she left the remaining 9 coins that were safe and turned the house upside down looking for that one that was lost. And then when she found it, she called her friends and said, let's celebrate, because what was lost is now found. And Jesus again said, in the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Jesus didn't say that for this parable. No, but they did it in this parable. Do you follow me? He didn't say, in the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Instead, they had a party, and they lived it out, this celebration, because one who was lost had come back home. And that's what happens in heaven. And that's what happened in heaven the moment you came to Jesus. By the way, you hear sometimes people talk about, having a come to Jesus meeting. And something bad's going to happen at this come to Jesus meeting. No, how wrong they are. Because a come to Jesus meeting is where there is love and compassion and acceptance, not criticism and harshness.